All right, hello and welcome. It is Wednesday, May 11th. We are in the first half of our second week here, and we are going to go directly in on this video to the review of the submissions from week one. So you had an opportunity to do a peer review assignment that shows up on FSO, and where did I go? There I am. In that peer review assignment, we had 6 people who submitted their work from 2D Platformer. And so we're going to take a listen to that, and you will also find a separate link on FSO for the download of the main archive that will discuss week 2. Week 2 assignments, the production technique, the new game composition, which is a game called Angry Bots. And in week 2, you will also be creating all of the sound effects from this first game for 2D Platformer. So week 1 here, you completed the music soundtrack. We created a series of 9 files. And in the session here, I've got all of the main loops over here on the right-hand side. They're a little bit longer. The intros here in the middle, and the endings over on the left-hand side. That's just kind of how they import in alphabetical order. So we're going to listen to these and kind of take an overview of each one of them. And you can now in week 2, you will also get everybody will get a grade sheet, some individual feedback, and you can also check out the archive here for the kind of the video feedback for your particular project. And by the end of this week, by Sunday, you can complete your week 1 revision. So here in week 2, you are fixing up your main composition for the music. You are creating all of the sound effects. And so by the end of everything, by the end of week 2 here, you will have your first fully completed game with both music and sound effects. Hopefully you've taken the opportunity to actually check out how your music works in the game. You've taken the 9 files that you bounced and delivered and actually put them into the game to see how they work. And let me just remind you of that real quick. Take a copy of the game here. So when you download the assignment, you get a version of the game. And to place your own music, your own 9 audio files, to make them work in the game, you can put them in a particular folder in this application package. So you just right click on it and do show package contents. Most applications on a Mac computer are really just a folder filled with the rest of the application. So you do show package contents and you'll find a folder called contents. You go into contents and you will find data, and in data you will find streaming assets. And in streaming assets you will find 2 familiar folders, both music and sound effects. And that folder structure, those order of those folders are available in the assignment PDFs. So you put your 9 files here, and the next time you play the game, you will hear all of your music playing back correctly, assuming that all of the files are named correctly, they're formatted properly with the correct sample rate and bit depth, they're all stereo files, then the game will play them back properly. And by the end of this week, you will have all of these, I think there are 18 of these audio files for the sound effects. So the archive video for week 2 will kind of detail the process of creating those sound effects and all the rest of your assignments for week 2. But for now, we have 6 submissions for the 2D Platformer assignment. Let me just bring up the grade sheet here so I can kind of discuss the feedback that you will be getting in the next couple of days. Let's see, where's that PDF? Right here. And it will kind of discuss overall what we're listening for in this 2D Platformer assignment. So we can see that folks delivered these 9 files. We have 3 main loops. If I zoom in here, You'll see that these are our 3 intro files. Now, notice that there's 6 different submissions here. These are 6 different students. And each one of these tracks has all of their particular files on it. So we have our ending cues here. And that correlates to the grade sheet here, where we have 3 columns for intro, the intro category of music. Then we have 3 for the main loops and 3 for the endings. So we will start out by listening to the main loops because that will give us the most kind of direct idea of what the music is supposed to be about, and then we can get a sense with the intros and endings how it moves in and out of those main loops. So we have a couple of different categories here: formatting, instrumentation, looping, composition, and mix. Formatting is it in the correct format? Correct name of the file, like I said, sample rate, the bit depth, number of channels, everything should be 16-bit 44.1 stereo files. And all of the main loop cues need to be 8 bars long. So that should be pretty straightforward, but the game is not going to work if these files are not formatted correctly. Or the game is just not going to play any music at all. The game will still play, but you won't hear anything. Instrumentation. Each cue requires enough instrumentation for drums, bass, harmony, and melody. You definitely need a groove or rhythm from a drum pattern, and a strong melody on top of that that really defines the development in each individual kind of musical voice of the cues. What instrumentation you use is up to you, but there should be instrumentation in all of the cues. The full drums, bass, harmony, and melody need to be in both endings and the intros to go in and out of the cues, so that every once in a while the ending files will not have any drums, and so it feels like the drummer just stops as you go from main loop to the ending cues. Looping. Everything needs to loop properly. If we take a look at these files here, there's no gaps at the beginning or end of the files. There's no fades. These look actually like they might have some fades at the end where it goes to silence. We got to watch out for that, or else it'll create a noticeable gap every single time it loops around. But most of them overall look like they fill the full region. Composition. Let's see where my mouse goes. There we go. Composition is a pretty wide open category because it encompasses a lot of different things. The strength of your melody, your chord progression, your bass line and drums, is their development through the different cues. There's little repetition within a 8-bar cue. You don't want to repeat the same idea over and over again as the music loops around and around. Is anything missing? Is anything just kind of does not fit the overall kind of idea of the game? Or there's dissonance, or there's rhythmic issues, or any of those multitude of problems. And mix is kind of the same thing. It's pretty wide open. You do kind of have the control over the final mix because you are making both music and sound effects. The final mix of how those balance against each other is up to you. So there isn't a direct kind of gain value that you aim for, but overall you want to make sure you kind of fill up the meter. Loud, sort of strong waveforms, probably a better way of saying it. But in this category, we're looking for any sort of wild issues of either too loud, where it's overloading and distorting, and maybe there's a limiter or compressor that's completely squashing the mix, or too low overall, where you have little tiny waveforms, or the drums are huge peaks, but the average level of the instruments is not balanced against that very well. Things get lost in the mix, things wildly panned all over the place, or no reverb, or completely buried in reverb, just kind of the extreme ends of either too much or not enough of something in the mix. And then with the intro and ending cues, They're pretty much the same thing, right, with formatting, instrumentation, but instead of looping, the intros and ending files do not loop. There's a consistency category, and we're looking for consistency as you transition from intro into main loop into the endings, and all of the different random combinations of 1, 2, and 3 transition or easily and purposefully from the intros into the main loops into the endings. So that means consistency of instrumentation. Again, the drums don't just disappear going in or out of the main loops. There's instrumentation that changes too much, or you make sure that you use all of the instruments, melody, harmony, and percussion to build and resolve the main loop. Those are generally the things that we're looking for overall. So you'll get individual comments and grade and feedback, but again, this is your first draft, so you can use the revision opportunity to make any changes of that. And those will show up in the next day or so into your into the comments on your submissions. So let's take a look at everybody's overall and see if there's anything that we can just identify visually. And then we'll go through one at a time and take a listen. So, starting out here, again, we'll start with the main loops. Everything looks pretty good. Again, this one looks a little bit low in volume overall. The rest of them look at a pretty solid level. You got to watch out maybe for, especially this one, maybe a bit too loud overall, but of course that's just looking at the waveforms. You have to listen to it to make any real determination. The intro loops need to build, or sorry, the intro cues, they don't loop. The intro cues need to build heading into the main loops. The ending of the intro cues need to be at the same volume and intensity to make sense when moving into the main loops. There's no gaps at the end. There's no issues with rhythmic inconsistencies as it transitions from one to the next. Similar for the ending cues. You need to have a strong level at the beginning of your ending cue to help transition smoothly from the main loops. And then everything needs to resolve to silence and to a finish and to an ending. So that means they need the music and the instrumentation needs to end and reach silence with either instrument decay or reverb tails or cymbal crash tails, kind of heading all the way to silence before it gets cut off by the end of the file. So this looks good, this looks good, this probably looks good, but the overall levels again are a bit low. This looks good except for it looks like there's a, either it's an individual percussion hit at the end or the metronome playing in those. This, you gotta watch out for this. These files will get cut off by the end of the file when it reaches the end. These look good also. So, again, that's just visually looking at it. Really doesn't matter until we take a listen to it. So we're going to go through one at a time and see what we find. All right, let me make sure again that this level works. And we'll start out with our first main loop. Zoom in a little bit. Let me do this too. This might make sense as we go along. We'll just hide the other ones. All right, main loop 1. Turn that down. Very good. First off, I like the energy level of it. I like the progression overall. A couple of things that I want to point out is the drums do seem to be far back in the mix. And then the progression feels like it repeats from the first half and the second half. Even the melodic line from the brass. It sounds like a saxophone. Then that progression or that phrase repeats in the first half and second half. So go ahead and develop the melody further in the second 4 bars of that cue. Let's see with the second one here. Good, I like the change. Nice. So good changes through there. Also feel like the melody line develops better in the second half. Cool. And we'll go to the third one here. A little rhythmic change. Great. The piano takes the lead this time. Very good. Yeah, I would say that this second and third one developed better than the first one, so a little bit more through the full 8 bars there. Let's go into these intro cues. All right, I would say this third one works the best. Let's see, mainly because it has all of the instrumentation from the beginning. Maybe a little bit more variation on the snare, but overall, the one like this first one, main thing I heard is that it took a little while for the rest of the instrumentation to come in. So I would probably use a little bit of the bass and maybe a bit more drums, at least in the second 1 bar of that. Or the second bar. Just basically using all instrumentation through the cue. But they definitely build correctly. They have a nice energy as it rises up towards the main loop. And 3 endings. Great. Yep. Sound similar. Did I? Wait. Because I grabbed the same one. That was 3. I'm missing 1. Let's try this one. Great. All right, watch that cymbal crash. It gets cut off by the end of the file. You need to make sure that that fades all the way to silence. The other ones probably do it too. Yeah. Watch out for that. Just create a natural fade or unnatural fade. Just fade it to silence right at the end. All right, good stuff. Nice development. A little bit more in the first half, second half of that one. The intros rise. Make sure you use all of the instrumentation, and the endings work out pretty well overall. Just make sure they don't get cut off. Good stuff to start with. Let's go on to the next one here. Let me know if you have any questions as we go along. All right, I think we're set. Let's go with the second one here. Let's do this. Nice. Like the groove here. Very good. Excellent. Good progression. Make mixes nicely. All right, let's go to the second loop here. Good, now we have the organ. Good panning on the instrumentation. Let's check the loop. We'll go to the third one here. I would say by the third one that I'd like to feel more of a change through the rhythm and the progression. Really feels like they're variations on one similar idea, and would like to maybe hear the percussion, probably the pacing of the percussion, maybe a little bit more something with a double time feel or a little bit more frantic through at least one of the cues. But overall, the production of it, the choice of instrumentation, and the progressions are very fun. It definitely works nicely. Just the general direction, the harmonic direction of each cue is relatively similar, with that swing kind of feel. Maybe going to something that's more straight ahead, kind of double time feel on either the hi-hat or not like you need to double the whole pace of every instrument, but let's go over to the intros here, see how these work. The intro 3 definitely feels good. All right, they fit very nicely overall. I'm going to have a feeling that these endings are going to work just the same. Nice. Shaving a haircut. Cool. I would say that maybe the endings might be a little too happy major, hitting on something that has a bit more dissonance in there to kind of to say you screwed up, and go ahead and try it again. That kind of feel, instead of resolving everything so solidly back to the tonic. 5-1 kind of things. No, I'm sure shaving a haircut is public domain by now. I would hope so. Overall, very, very good. Very fits nicely. Instrumentation works out very well, and it transitions from one cue to the next very, very nicely. So, a couple of tweaks here and there. More of it is just kind of creative decisions and more kind of variation from one cue to the next, but overall, two good ones. Let's keep moving on. And I think we're good. Here we go. Alright, so the first thing notice is the gap at the end, and the overall level. Everything can be brought up a whole lot more. Oh, that last chord feels very out of place. And the rest of it, I hear drums, bass, I really hear much of a melody. Much of a harmony, and the melody just feels like the one synth, kind of the portamento synth, kind of moving back and forth pretty quickly. So more development, less repetition through the cues. feels like it's the similar, like an arpeggio, just dancing around a bit. So needs more development to fit overall, to fit within the boundaries of the game. I actually like the rhythm of this the best out of the three of them. Kind of has more of a darker feel. If you gave it a little bit of a spaceship alien kind of vibe to it, it would definitely work. Go for more of the sci-fi synthy kind of side of it. Let's try 3 intros. Yeah, watch the gaps. Yeah, these feel more like endings because they all stop and resolve. So you want to make sure that they build, they kind of flip in the reverse of this. They build up towards the end where they would directly match with the main loop cues. 3 endings. The last chord works to be kind of the, yeah, I like it where it hits on one last chord like that versus just kind of tailing out overall. Watch out for things like this. The sound kind of has a little sound effect-y kind of vibe to it. You always want to make sure that even things that might even remotely sound like sound effects are out of the music, and because you don't want to step on the toes of the sound designers. All right, so more instrumentation, more development, more level. Watch the looping and the gaps at the end of the files to make that function and kind of sound proper in the game. And the best thing to do is take all of those files and put them in the game and play around with it and see where the issues are and see where the gaps are. And then if you just make sure that everything is edited as tight as possible, then it should transition nicely. All right, let's take this down. We'll blast ourselves again and try this one. Do I have it? Hold on a sec. No. Am I hearing that? Oh. I'm sorry. I'm like, I hear something in there. Might help if I mute the previous one. It's like, is that a metronome or what's going on there? Some other random hi-hat. All right, let's try that again. But I do still feel like I hear a metronome here. Whoa, sorry about that. All right, so overall, good groove. I don't necessarily feel like it fits the overall vibe of the game. It sounds a little too dark and menacing, but I definitely like the live guitar, and kind of even too slow. It needs to be a little bit more upbeat and bouncy. This would work very well for this week's game, Angry Bots. So let's listen to the second one. I also would like to hear more of a lead line. So, still don't hear much of a melody. I mean, you have the organ in there, but everything just moves on the chord changes. You got a cool groove from the guitar. I think that between the guitar and the drums is the best like vibe of the whole thing. There's a lead. Well, sounds more of the, sounds like a too fake of a guitar. So watch the repetition in the phrasing in between each cue. And now let's go to the intros. Cool, I like that. Again, watch the metronome. That's going to be more obvious in these lower parts. Neither of these, this one feels a little bit more like an intro. This feels like an ending. Like it almost feels like it's ready to resolve. This almost feels like a cool 2-bar groove. Dun, 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 dun. But it doesn't like build up, like ready for a big drop into the main loops. So a little more build from those. And I see metronome through here. This would probably be the best one, as long as they pretty much need to start from here. Even that is a little too short overall, but like this one just has a gap in the beginning, so that's going to cause issue. But I haven't even heard this bass until it plays here, probably because it's very close to the same pattern as the guitar and the other phrase and the other cues. That sounds like an ending, but it's like the first bar shouldn't build up. This one works. Let's see. I like the kind of suspended feel that's held in this third one. All right, so probably should bring up the pacing of everything. You should introduce more of a melodic development through these cues, and then watch how it kind of builds and resolves through the intros and endings. All right, moving on. All right, make sure I'm muted this time. Make sure everything is muted. And take a listen to this. I like the pace of this. I was almost going to say that the lead synth was too low, but then I've been listening with only one side on. Then I put both earphones on, and I heard that it was a little panned too far to the right. Like it's pretty low in my left side, but it's perfectly fine on the right side. So watch the panning of that lead synth. This one's too repetitive. Just kind of go do 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 do. Follows the chord changes, moves around, but there's not too much development in the melody. Not like you had over here, I think. Yeah, there's more development through those. All right, so there's a change in the rhythm and the bass line. Intros. That one sounds like an ending. because it ends. These work. You could probably even go to a faster pace at the second 2 beats of bar 2. Kind of double time it each, kind of like half, quarter, quarter, eighth. I would use the first 2 beats there. Make sure there's more instrumentation there. I like where it starts on that chord. So, I mean, most of that stuff is pretty minute except for the intro 3. It really feels more like an ending. So, and then these endings look like they'll get cut off. So let's check that out. Chop. Oops. Compositionally, they definitely work. They just get cut off at the end. So now, with the ending cues, and this goes for everybody, and something I really don't point out in the beginning because I kind of want to either come to this issue or have everybody figure it out on their own. But one thing I do want to point out is for the ending cues, it says that the ending cues have to be 2 bars long. And just here for the ending cues, the music has to be 2 bars, but the file can extend longer than that. So if you need some room to hit that last chord and decay out to silence, or a cymbal crash fades to silence, or a reverb or something happens, just in the ending cues you can use some extra time and make the file longer than 2 bars as long as the music resolves and ends in 2 bars. So that will probably help those cues. So nice groove overall. Good development through these. Need a little bit more development through the third one. The sounds and the instrumentation and the sound of the drums and the groove overall works nicely. And just some small tweaks that I mentioned to the intro files. All right. Doing well. One more. Let's try one more here. Hide. Main loop. There we go. All right, definitely needs more development from the melody as opposed to just going back and forth between the 2 notes. So need more from that, and the chord progression for whatever pad or synth that is below the lead sound feels quite dissonant against the lead. Not sure what that is, but it doesn't feel that it's kind of fits harmonically with the lead line. So definitely need to go beyond just the 2 notes, especially as you go from one to the next. There's not a real strong chord progression or phrasing of the drums or bass or harmony or anything, so it's hard to tell as you just go back and forth between the notes the differences between the first, the second, and the third. So more development within an 8th bar so that the melody develops beyond just the notes and uses the full key that you're in to develop the melody across the 8 bars. And then from 1 to 2 to 3, there needs to be change in each one of those, from the lead instruments to the patterns of the drums and the chord progressions. And let's go to the first one here. Get my screen back. Intro 1. Again, each one of these feels like a 2-bar loop. Like I could just sit here and loop around. They don't really rise, they don't build. So you definitely need to kind of increase that sense of anticipation as it rises up into the main loops and drops down on the first downbeat of whichever main loop. Endings. Oh, there's a little change. Very in there. All right, so most of these feel like they just kind of stop overall. There is a little bit of flair at the last one here. As you go up for the octave. But just like the other cues, if you develop each one of these further, then your intros and endings will kind of fall in line so that the melodic lead synth there moves throughout each one of the cue and has its own voice, kind of separate from 1 to 2 to 3 in each variation. All right. Very good, very good. That gets us through all of the submissions here. If you have any questions, of course, you'll be getting individualized feedback. You can make comments and we can discuss anything. Really, the grade sheets are the start of the conversation. And if you have any clarification or how the grade sheet works or anything like that, let me know. And for everybody else, if you did not submit your session here for this peer review, hopefully this encourages you next time with Angry Bots to submit, that you, for each individual person, it works out very well because you get kind of a video feedback of how everything works. But for everybody else, even if you didn't submit, you get to see all sorts of different approaches to the same project. Things that you would have thought of, you didn't think of, you would have done better, you wouldn't have even considered that awesome idea, whatever it is. So it kind of gives us a good overview to see how everybody is doing in the class and see what overall approaches work and don't. So we'll do this each Wednesday class. We will talk about the new assignments of the week, and we will also go through and discuss any of the submissions from the previous week. So the archive for the rest of the session here for discussion of the week 2 assignments, that was posted up on FSO. So you can find that there. And if you have any questions, let me know. But I think we will wrap it up there. So thank you very much, and have a good afternoon. Try your sounds and music in the game. Always want to do that. And we will see you again on Friday. Thanks.